Hello everyone, welcome back. I am so excited about this video because we are going to be covering a new psychic tool that I only just discovered, and they are called the Lenormand cards. So welcome if you are new here. My name is Lauren and I am a psychic coach, and here on my channel I like to teach people how to understand their intuitive abilities, how to strengthen them, and most importantly how to work with tools so that they don't become a crutch. I like to review every single psychic tool that is out there, and I cannot believe it took me this long to learn about the Lenormand cards. We all know about tarot cards, we all know about oracle cards, but how many of you have heard of Lenormand? Not many of us. And so I'm fairly new to this, and because of that, I am bringing in a guest today to help me talk about the Lenormand. And that is going to be Layla from the Lenormand Reader, and she knows way more about this than me. But basically, we are going to go over all the steps of how to use these cards, how to understand them. So theoretically, by the end of this video, you can be hopping on over to her channel to learn more or to buy your own deck so that you can start reading with these. So I first want to introduce our special guest, Layla. She has been such a resource for me for understanding how these Lenormand cards work. She has a YouTube channel and it is just packed full of information on how to read these cards. She has tons of free videos, but then she also has courses. She's literally an expert on this, and if you like my style, I think you're also going to like her because she's very organized, she's very practical. I love her approach in that she's just so down to earth. She's not like super woo-woo about things. Like, she'll teach you the practicalities of how this works and leave room for your own interpretations. So I'm gonna have Layla go ahead and introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about what she does and what she offers.
Well, thanks, Lauren. It is such a wonderful opportunity to be here, and I was really delighted that you approached me. I'm very, very passionate about Lenormand, and like most other people who reach Lenormand or discover it, I started off reading tarot. And, through the process, you get interested in all sorts of decks. You start buying oracle cards, all sorts of cards. And so one day I landed on the Lenormand deck, and I picked it up, and it was the beautiful box by Titania Hardy. I drew my first spread, and I simply couldn't believe how accurate and how on point the cards were. So I was immediately hooked, and I went on from there. Now, Lenormand is not as well, or should I say the Lenormand field is not as well structured, is not as big as the tarot world. So it can be a little bit challenging to navigate what's available out there in Lenormand. And I went through the frustrations that everyone went through. And at the end of the day, I decided I was just going to take this into my own hands and build my practice. So I already had my personal dictionaries and my personal guides in the works. I finalized these, and on top of them, I built a course. So now I offer an end-to-end master course for Lenormand. I think I might be one of the few people out there who does it. It really is a small and niche kind of space, but it is really enjoyable, and it's a beautiful practice.
I would also recommend checking out Layla's YouTube channel because she does weekly readings, and she also does like monthly readings and a ton of pick a card videos. So you're not only getting a reading from yourself, but you're also learning and watching her use the Lenormand. And that's one of the biggest ways I've learned, is just by watching her readings. So the first thing I want to ask Layla is, what is the history behind the Lenormand cards?
So Mademoiselle Lenormand is a French fortune teller. She was born in 1772, I believe, and she died in 1843. She was born in a small town in France, but she found her way to Paris, and she ended up mixing with the more elite circles. And in France at the time, 18th, 19th century, they had these salons where you had these elite women who would invite people to their places, and they would discuss politics, literature and things like that. So apparently Mademoiselle Lenormand found her way into these circles, and she started reading for others. She did end up read for very high profile individuals, including, they say, Napoleon himself, his wife, Empress Josephine, and they also say that she read for Tsar Alexander from Russia when Russia invaded France. So there's all of these interesting things that she read about in history and people she read for. And it's not always clear what this might be about, but because she was able to read, and she was also focused on politics, it did cause some challenges. So she did end up in jail a couple of times, apparently. So very interesting history. Now, when it comes to the cards themselves, there is quite a lot of debate as to where those cards originate from, but we have lots of reasons to believe that she did not create the cards. There were playing cards at the time that have very similar structures to the deck that she used. And so there's lots of reasons to believe that these cards were already in circulation at the time. What she seems to have done is take them and use them for divination purposes. And after she died, there are publishers, mainly in Germany, that took her work and published these cards as fortune cards under her name after she died. So there's quite a lot of interesting stuff going on around the history, but we can't really say for sure, what the cards were, who started with them and things like that. But we're pretty sure that she divined with these cards. So that's what I can tell you about the very interesting history of Mademoiselle Lenormand.
I've definitely known the history of the tarot and I've learned all about that, but I think the history of the Lenormand cards are just fascinating. So next, I want to get into just the basics of understanding the cards before we jump into learning how to read them. So Layla, can you kind of describe the cards for me? How many are there? What are they all about?
It's a small deck. It is just a 36 card deck, which is very different from the big deck of the tarot, which has 78 cards. And in Lenormand, you don't really read cards reversed. I've come across authors who try, or who might do that, just being inspired from the tarot, but it's just 36 cards. So the individual cards, they have a basic meaning, but the richness of meaning comes from combining the cards. And it's not a simple or a shallow kind of combination. It has a lot more depth. And as a result, we end up with these big spreads in Lenormand, like the Grand Tableau and these long spreads, like you could see on my channel. And the reason we end up doing this is because we need more cards for a richer meaning. We end up with these big spreads. And so through these long lines, we have a lot more cards that we sort of string together in what we call sentences. And it can be very grammar-like. And some authors really use Lenormand symbol like literally a language. The symbol on the cards are from everyday life, so it's very easy to connect with them. Cards like the heart or the ring or the clover or the coffin or the whip, they immediately speak to us. So with Lenormand, we don't need to learn like an esoteric language or symbols first in order to get to the meaning of the cards. We immediately resonate with them.
I think the biggest thing that drew me to the Lenormand cards was the fact that you could kind of read it like a sentence. Like each card is another piece of this full picture, and they can be very, very literal. And one thing that you'll notice about the original kind of Lenormand cards, as well as every adaptation that are out there, is that they have suits on them, like playing card suits. And I think that's a little confusing because you also have something similar in the tarot, and we call those the pips. So I want to ask Layla all about these like suits on these cards.
I think for starters, the suits capture the history of the cards. They do have divination meaning. And this is very similar to the tarot, right? Because the tarot suits actually correspond to playing card suits. So in the tarot, they've taken, they've taken the hearts and they've turned them into cups, right? And so something similar is happening with Lenormand. So the pips themselves, they have meaning, and the number has a meaning. The people cards have meanings, and so does the suit.
So we have the spades, which is kind of about structure and work. Hearts are very similar to the cups in tarot. Feelings and emotions are usually surrounding the hearts. Diamonds is more about earthly matters. Think like pentacles in the tarot. And then we have clubs, which are like challenges or obstacles. However, you are missing some cards in the Lenormand deck that you might find in tarot. Like there's no knight cards in the Lenormand. So the pips are very variable.
I personally do not use them so much, but the reason I don't is because when I developed my approach to the cards, I've decided I was going to assimilate all of the elements on a card into a unified meaning for each card. So I don't have to look at the pips for additional meaning. It's already assimilated into the card symbol and the card overall. So that was a decision I made. But sometimes you might look at the pips, for example, to get a general sort of energy for the reading. So if there's a majority of hearts or a majority of clubs, it might give you additional insights into what's the overall energy of the reading. My approach in the course is to give you everything about the Lenormand in a coherent way, and then you can choose how you implement the practice. And that is really my goal.
And the next thing I want to ask, because every single deck comes with it, my deck actually comes with a few more, but in every deck you have a man and a woman card, and I want to know what those are all about.
They refer to the reader or the readee or the person being read for. So they represent real people. And they're very neutral cards. They don't tell you if the person is nice or not nice or what they're like. The characteristics, the features of these people is entirely drawn from nearby cards in a reading. The main use of the man and the woman is in the grand tableau. Now, you don't have to use these cards necessarily in these ways. You can decide beforehand how you're going to use them. You can also decide which card you want to choose to represent you. And, it's perfectly fine. You can also decide who the other significator represents in the reading for you, if it represents a lover, a partner, or it might be someone else. These two cards in a tableau, what's really fun about this is that you can look at the cards that are closest to each of them, and they tell you a lot about what's going on with them, what they're like. And also you can look at the cards between them and sort of see what the interaction between them is like. So in a tableau, there's a whole lot of techniques that you can use around the significators, men and women, to get a lot of insights into the reading and the reader.
So I'm going to ask Layla next, are there positive cards and are there negative cards? Are there neutral cards?
There are positive cards, negative cards, or challenging cards, and you have neutral cards. So there are standout cards like the sun, the clover, they're obviously positive, and you have other cards that are very obviously challenging like the whip, the scythe, the coffin, or the mouse. And then the neutral cards would be something like the letter, for example, or the rider, more or less. So the thing about the cards is that even though they have clear challenging aspects or clear positive aspects, it's worth keeping in mind that at the end of the day, you're reading cards in combinations. So there are times when an obviously positive card might be influenced by challenging cards. So it loses that strength of positivity. And the same thing happens with challenging cards. They are in and of themselves challenging, but maybe cards nearby can help overcome them. So they become different, or they're not as challenging.
So an example of other cards changing the meaning of other cards, we have the letter card. And the letter can basically talk about like news, a message, something that you're receiving from someone else. Now, if you pair that with the sun card, for example, that might mean that there's good news that's coming. However, if you pull the coffin card instead, this might make it a little bit more of a negative meaning. Maybe there's some news about something ending, or maybe it's just bad news in general. So it kind of changes the meaning based on the other cards that you pull. And now we can jump into actually reading the Lenormand. And again, I'm giving a very brief overview. I think if you really want to learn, hop on over to Layla's channel. She's going to have you way better covered over there. And I want to ask Layla, like, what would you use Lenormand cards for? Like, what types of readings can you do?
That's another key question with Lenormand, and I get this a lot from my students as well and from people on the community. Basically, essentially, you can ask any question with Lenormand, and what's also interesting is that you can do the same layout for any question, because layouts are flexible to the question because they're all tableau style. So there isn't really a type of question that you can't ask with Lenormand. It just comes down to what you prefer not to ask about. Now, I know that people get a sense that, oh, they're so day-to-day, they're so kind of mundane. But again, there is a whole lot of meaning that you can get from combining the cards. So for example, the tree. The tree is one of the cards that maybe people don't immediately understand what it means. Well, it means strength and good health and, that sense of vitality and growth. Well, what does it mean in relationships? What does it mean for money? What does it mean for home and family? So if people are curious about how this is done, they can have a look at the guide, but they can also practice on their own. Take any card and ask yourself, what does it mean for money? What does it mean for relationships? What does it mean for spirituality? etc. That's part of the growth as a Lenormand reader, where you build your interpretation skills and you can start making sense of the cards for all of these different contexts. So you need to define your dictionary before you start doing layouts. So the spread is just one spread or a few spreads, and what's typical of them is that they're tableau style spreads, and tableau means a portrait in French. And so what they are is these big geometric figures where you have rows and columns and diagonals in a square or a rectangle or something like that. And the point of this setup or this configuration is that you can read the rows, the columns, the diagonals. You combine the cards in these sentences and you derive meaning and insights into what's going on. So with Lenormand layouts, there aren't these positions in the spread like in tarot. So for example, with the horseshoe spread, very popular 7-card spread with the tarot, oracle cards, and others, you have a past card, you have a present card, a future position, the obstacle, the other people, the advice, and the outcome. The card that lands on these tells you about these specific areas in relation to the reading or the question. You don't have that in Lenormand. You have a bunch of cards in a configuration that is geometrical, like a rectangle or a square, and you just combine the cards and you read, you know? So you don't need a specific layout to answer a specific question. You could use basically any tableau layout to answer any question in Lenormand. And the go-to layout is typically the portrait, and then the other popular one is the grand tableau, where you use all of the cards. That's a bit more complex, but it is based on the principles of the portrait, you know, where you combine the cards, you read them in rows and columns, and you see what the answer is to your question. And you can use these layouts for just about any question. You know, that's very, very unique to Lenormand.
Now, just to do a quick example reading, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just pull 3 cards, and I'm going to ask what the person that I'm reading, this is an imaginary person, what they need to know about their career at this current time. All right. And so I pulled the stork, the scythe, and the child. Now, looking at the meanings individually first, we have stork. Now, stork can represent change or a transition. And then we have the scythe card, which is a little bit more of a negative meaning. This could mean like hasty decisions, danger, warning, accidents. And then we have the child, and the child is all about like new beginnings, childlike play, inexperience, immaturity. So we want to read the first 2 cards together first. So we have stork and scythe. And so if we're literally kind of reading it as like a sentence, this might be that there are changes or transitions, and they might be hasty. They might be hasty transitions, changes that are being made from a very like quick perspective. So maybe in this person's like career, maybe they're making some very hasty decisions and changes that maybe aren't the best. And then we read the next 2 together. So we have the scythe and the child. And so that might be hasty decisions, or just like hastiness, speed, and new beginnings. And so this to me kind of says, you know, maybe they're trying to jump into something new, and maybe that they're not quite ready yet, or maybe they aren't thinking it through. Layla will have to tell me if that's a good example. I'm definitely newer to this, and I think you can learn a lot just by listening to her and going through her courses. But that's kind of just like an example of how you might read it syntactically, left to right, very much like a sentence. So I think my next question for Layla is like, why should people learn the Lenormand?
There is something special that hooks you into Lenormand. It's a bit hard to put your finger on it, but I think that there are a couple of main reasons why people want to do Lenormand and why they end up assimilating it into their practice, even if they read other decks as well. I think the main reason is that it's in your face. So like you said earlier, you know, there is that thing that immediately jumps out when you do a Lenormand reading. It's in your face. So people like that, you know, they're like, oh, wow, you know, that is so spot on. And then they end up looking for that when they do more readings with Lenormand. They keep looking for that, you know, it hits the nail on the head kind of feeling with the cards. The second reason I think is because it can be really engaging for the interpretive imagination. You have all of these cards laid out in a tableau, and you can sort of just sit there, connecting the cards together, discovering what these sentences are telling you. And of course, with bigger spreads, there's so much to dig out. They say that Mademoiselle Lenormand spent an entire afternoon reading a tableau, and I completely understand that, because you can't really do it in one sitting for a layout this big. What you end up doing is sort of meditating over it, contemplating the cards. You might leave your table and come back, go get a coffee and then look at the cards again. So it can be a really amazing experience, just sort of digging out all of that juicy stuff from the layout and discovering how you can combine the cards and what these sentences are saying. So that can be really addictive, so people get hooked to this very special experience and these very in-your-face cards, and they end up practicing Lenormand and using it in their lives.
Now, hopefully you're really excited about starting with your own Lenormand deck, and I kind of just want to ask Layla, like, what's next? If you want to jump into this, where should you start?
There's a whole lot of Lenormand decks available out there right now. I think if you're just starting out, go with the regular 36 playing card deck. And like we said, it's becoming more and more common to have several significator sets. So, choose the ones you want to use and then insert them into the deck and leave out the rest, and make sure you're working with a 36 card deck. You definitely want to download my keywords list, and you'll find a whole lot of other keywords online, and then start building your vocabulary from there. You might want to ask a few questions, pull out a card, see how it answers it. And then once you're comfortable with the basic individual card meanings, then from there you want to move on to two card combinations and 3 card combinations. I have a whole lot of resources on this as well. It's on the blog, it's in my guides, of course, definitely in the master courses. And so slowly you start to read cards in combination. Something that I find is that people quickly get over this one card reading. They very quickly pick up that one card is just not complete. You need more cards. So that's a really good sign. It means that they're gonna move to the next level, and they understand what's going on with the cards. So they quickly move to card combinations, and this is where they spend most of their time building their Lenormand skills. And then from there, they start experimenting with layouts, bigger layouts, building on that essential card combination interpretation skills. I totally have a tutorial playlist, and I'm going to do more tutorials down the line. And a lot of these tutorial videos are linked to other resources that I have on the website, and to free resources that they can download immediately on the website. So there's plenty they can get started with just from looking at the tutorials video playlist and other playlists, including the card combinations playlist, as well as a Q&A. I've done a couple of Q&As so far. So there's a lot for them to get started with.
So I would definitely check out Layla's channel if you're wanting to learn even more about this. I know this was a very brief introduction, but hopefully from here you can go on over to her free videos or her courses, which I will link all of those down below, and really just get started and play around with the Lenormand. So thank you so much, Layla, for joining us. I'm so thrilled that she agreed to do this. I think her resources are fantastic. I was using them on my own anyways. And so thank you so much, Layla, for joining. I think hopefully your channel and your resources, your courses will be a huge help for everyone who wants to take this to the next step.
Well, thank you so much for this interview, Lauren. I was so totally delighted when you approached me. I was so excited about this opportunity, the opportunity to share this amazing Lenormand practice with you, with your followers, and I sure hope they're going to come through the channel and visit, and I certainly look forward to more interactions with you. I think your work is amazing too, and I'm really looking forward to learn more about what you offer, which I also think is very, very special.
Thank you, Layla. And I wanted to mention too that if you want to learn some of the other card systems, I do have a video that I will link above, and that covers both the Tarot, Oracle, and Lenormand, and kind of the big major differences in between each. But what I want to do now is I want to give you guys a little bit of a homework right here, and I want you to try to interpret these 2 cards that I pull. You can go ahead and use Layla's keyword document down below to try to figure out what it means. So I'm just going to ask the random question, what do I need to know about love life? And these are the 2 cards that you would see, and how would you interpret these? So we have the dog and we have the sun. So let me know in the comments down below how you would interpret those. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had so much fun learning the Lenormand, using Layla's resources, and honestly, like, this deck is beautiful. Seven Spear, Lenormand, and the Labyrinthos company, I will link them down below. They don't have like affiliate links, but this deck made me want to work with the Lenormand more. It is so beautiful. Remember to give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions about the system, feel free to leave it in the comments below, and either myself or Layla should be able to answer them. Alrighty, you guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!